My wife has a secret Facebook group called Anonymous Wives of Mediocre Men. I found it. And I was the main character. The group has thousands of members, all of them posting rants about husbands who think they're amazing, but who, according to them, are painfully mediocre. My wife posted every week, in detail, about me. What she never expected was that I'd be able to infiltrate the group and respond. I found the group by accident. I was on her laptop, looking for a file she asked me to print. That's when I saw the tab, half hidden behind an email draft, titled Anonymous Wives of Mediocre Men. At first, I thought it was a joke, some kind of meme group. But when I clicked, I saw thousands of members, tens of thousands. Every post started the same way. My husband thinks he's amazing, but they weren't just complaining. They were dissecting, analyzing, ridiculing. Everything from how their husbands kissed, to how they folded towels, to the way they breathed while watching TV. And then I saw her name. Not her full name, just her initials and a photo of a French bulldog. But it was her. I knew her writing, her voice, her sarcasm. And I knew the stories were about me. There was no mistaking it. H was me. My husband thinks he's a deep thinker because he listens to podcasts while vacuuming. That was me. He calls himself emotionally intelligent, but didn't notice I was crying after dinner last night. Also me. She posted every single week. And not just rants, charts, polls, screenshots. One time, she even uploaded a diagram she made to explain how I perform masculinity like a community theater actor in a bad Shakespeare play. I read until I felt sick. It wasn't just what she wrote. It was how many women agreed. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, laughing emojis. OMG, same. I married his twin. Men really think they're the prize, huh? I closed the laptop, heart racing. I wanted to confront her, yell, ask what the hell she was doing. But instead, I waited. And then I made a fake account. It took a week to get into the group. You had to be vetted by moderators, female only, no real names. You had to describe your husband in humiliating detail to prove you belonged. So I invented someone. A fictional man named Stefan, controlling, smug, always quoting Nietzsche, thinks playing chess makes him different. I copied phrases from other posts to sound convincing. They accepted me. And just like that, I had full access to all the archives, to every post my wife ever made, to every like she gave, every comment, every private joke with strangers about me, her real-life husband, the king of the mediocre men. But what she never expected was that I'd respond, not as myself. Not directly, but in code, in subtle, devastating replies. The first time I commented under one of her posts, I wrote, "Do you think your husband would be shocked if he knew you talked about him like this?" She replied, "Lowell, he wouldn't understand half of it." Then I replied again, "Maybe he's more observant than you think." She didn't like that. Her next post was about men who get weirdly paranoid when their wives laugh at their phones. And so it began. Our secret war. She didn't know she was fighting me, but I knew. I read every word, every insult, every funny story twisted to make me sound pathetic, and I hit back, quietly, strategically. But it's what happened next that changed everything. By the second week, I wasn't just lurking anymore. I was studying her. I read every post she ever made in that group. There were 63, some short, some long, some with pictures, cropped so no one could recognize me, but I knew. I recognized the shirts, the watch, the background of our living room. She called me Harold in her stories, a name she clearly chose for maximum blandness. And she didn't just talk about me like I was a joke. She described me like I was a failed experiment in masculinity. One post hit harder than the others. It was titled, "Why Does Mediocrity Feel So Smug?" She wrote, "My husband made spaghetti last night and looked at me like he deserved a medal. He told me he was pulling his weight. That's what counts as partnership now? Basic cooking skills once a week? Men like this think they're enlightened just because they don't cheat and sometimes clean the bathroom. It's exhausting." There were 4,700 likes. One woman commented, "My husband cleaned the fridge and told me I should be grateful he's not like other men." Another replied, "I call mine bare minimum Brad." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the screen in half. I didn't even remember the night she was talking about. I thought we had a nice dinner. I even lit a candle. I thought she was happy. That post destroyed me, but it also gave me an idea. If she was going to paint me as some symbol of male mediocrity, I was going to feed the fire, see how far she'd go. So I started acting more like Harold, I exaggerated all the things she hated. I left dishes half-washed, told boring stories at dinner, quoted articles I barely read. Every time she posted about it, I'd comment anonymously, just vague enough not to give myself away. Sounds like you're being emotionally starved while being expected to applaud mediocrity. She liked that comment. She even replied, "It's the emotional starvation for me." I swear to God, I almost laughed out loud. She had no idea, but it didn't stop there. Eventually, I saw her post something that made my blood run cold. Sometimes I fantasize about getting in my car and just driving. No destination, just leaving. I don't hate him, I just feel invisible. It was raw, honest, not sarcastic, not mocking. It didn't feel like entertainment anymore. It felt like a confession. And suddenly, I wasn't angry. I was terrified. Had she really been feeling this all along, while I was busy trying to be a good husband in the most performative ways? Had I been so blind, so self-satisfied, that I missed the slow rot underneath our marriage? I didn't comment on that post. I couldn't. Instead, I started writing my own, still in disguise, still part of the group, but from a different perspective. Does anyone here ever feel guilty for how they talk about their husbands? Like, what if he's not perfect, but he's trying? The responses were brutal. Trying isn't the same as changing. They always say they're trying. While we drown, and then she replied too. My wife, trying is meaningless if the effort is self-centered. My husband tries to impress me, but he never actually sees me. That broke me, because she was right, and what I did next was something I never expected of myself. I stopped commenting. For 3 days, I didn't open the group. I couldn't. Every word in there felt like a mirror I didn't want to face, warped, but still accurate enough to hurt. Instead, I watched her. Not in a creepy way, just closely, carefully, like I was meeting her for the first time. I noticed things I had ignored for years. The way her face tightened when I spoke over her without realizing, the way she sighed quietly after folding my laundry, again. The silence between us in the evenings, when we sat on the same couch, breathing the same air, but not really together. She wasn't cold. She wasn't mean. She was distant. And I had no idea when that distance began. That night, I offered to cook dinner again, properly, not just some smug display of husband points. I made one of her favorites, didn't say a word about it, didn't expect praise. She said thank you, politely. Like I was a waiter, and I realized how far gone we were. But something shifted the next morning. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a call in the hallway. It buzzed. A notification popped up from the group. AWMM. You've been tagged in a comment. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. It was a comment on one of her old posts, the one about emotional starvation. Another woman had replied, "Have you ever talked to him about this? Or are you just waiting for him to magically read your mind?" Then someone else tagged her and added, "Or maybe he's not the villain. Maybe he's just lost, like a lot of them are." She hadn't responded yet. I felt something in my chest, not hope exactly, just a crack, a possibility, so I made a decision. If I was going to fix this, if there was anything left to fix, I couldn't keep hiding. That night, after she fell asleep, I went into the group one last time. I wrote a post, a real one, honest, raw, not pretending to be someone else. No fake husband, no sarcastic tone. Just this. What if one of the mediocre men you're all talking about found this group? What if he realized too late that the woman he loves feels like a stranger next to him? What if he read every post and still couldn't hate her, only himself? What would you tell him to do if he finally wants to see her before she disappears? I signed it anonymously. Within minutes, the comments poured in. Some were cruel. Too little, too late. Cry me a river. Be a man and talk to her, not us. But one stood out. It said, "If you're serious, write her a letter. No excuses. No, I'm trying. Just truth. Women like her deserve to be seen before they disappear completely." The comment was from my wife. She didn't know it was me, but I knew exactly what I had to do next. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights she had stayed awake next to me, feeling invisible. By morning, I had written the letter, not typed, not edited, not polished, just ink and paper, messy and raw, 4 pages, no excuses, no blame, only truth. I wrote about how I found the group, how I had been reading everything, how I had pretended to be someone else. I told her I deserved every word she wrote, even the cruel ones, because I hadn't really seen her in years. I told her I thought I was a good husband because I wasn't bad. I didn't cheat. I didn't hit. I remembered birthdays. I showed up, but I never noticed her. Not really. I told her that somewhere along the way, I stopped asking who she was becoming. I kept loving the version of her I married, not the version she was evolving into, and now I feared I didn't know her at all. I left the letter on her pillow. Then I left the house. I needed to give her space. Or maybe I just couldn't handle watching her read it. I sat in my car for hours, parked outside a supermarket, watching people come and go, wondering if any of them were part of that group too, wondering how many other men had no idea they were the main characters in someone else's secret story. Around noon, I checked my phone. One missed call from her. Just one. No message. I didn't call back. Instead, I went home. She wasn't in the living room. Or the kitchen. I thought she might have left. But then I heard the shower running. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, staring at the crumpled envelope I'd written her name on. When she came out, she didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me. Her eyes were red, but not furious, not broken. She sat down across from me. "Was it really you?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Her voice was calm, but shaking slightly. "You read all of it?" "All of it," I said. She looked away, biting her lip. "I didn't write those things to be cruel," she said. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know how to tell you without breaking something." I nodded again. "You didn't break it. I did. I just didn't notice." We sat in silence for a long time. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You weren't a bad husband, but you were a stranger who thought he knew me, and she was right. So painfully right." I didn't apologize again. I had already done that in the letter. Words weren't enough anymore. Instead, I asked the question I should have asked years ago. "What do you need me to see?" She looked at me for a long time, measuring the weight of that question. Then she finally answered, but what she said wasn't what I expected. She didn't speak right away. She looked down at her hands, fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve, like she was debating whether or not I deserved the truth, or maybe she was wondering if I could handle it. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "I need you to see that I'm not happy, and haven't been for a long time." It landed like a punch to the chest. Not because it was a surprise, but because hearing it aloud shattered every illusion I'd been clinging to. "I thought you were just tired," I said, ashamed of how hollow it sounded. "I was tired," she replied. "Then I got numb. Then I started screaming in places where you couldn't hear me." I nodded slowly. "Like a Facebook group with thousands of strangers." Her expression changed. Not guilt, exactly, just exhaustion. "I never thought you'd see it," she admitted. "It was supposed to be a pressure valve, a place to say the things I couldn't say to your face without destroying us. You destroyed me anyway," I said. Not angry, just honest. She flinched at that, but she didn't deny it. "I know," she whispered. Then she looked up at me, her voice steadier now, sharper. "But you also needed to be destroyed a little. You were too proud, too certain you were doing enough. You thought being decent was the same as being present, and again." She was right. I wanted to defend myself, to say, "I tried," but I knew how that would sound. So instead, I asked the only question that mattered now. "Do you want to leave me?" She didn't hesitate. "I don't know." That uncertainty hurt more than a yes would have. "But," she continued, "for the first time in years, you're listening." I leaned forward, desperate to keep that fragile thread between us from snapping. "Then let me listen. Not just now, from now on. Tell me everything. The ugly, the unfair, the things you're afraid to say out loud." She studied me carefully, like she was trying to decide if this version of me was real or just another act. Then she said something that changed everything. "You want to listen now. But you were inside the group, pretending, manipulating, watching me bleed and never stopping me. I didn't know how," I admitted. "I was angry, then scared, then ashamed. I didn't know if I deserved to stop you." She looked at me for a long time. "You didn't." Silence again. Then she stood up. "I'm going to my sister's for a few days. I need to think." I nodded, even though every cell in my body wanted to beg her to stay. She grabbed a small bag she had clearly already packed, maybe before I wrote the letter. Before she walked out, she turned to me and said, "If this is real, this change, then don't prove it with flowers or texts. Prove it by staying uncomfortable, by not looking away." And then she left. I sat there for hours, and I knew. This wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about becoming someone worth staying for. The house felt different without her. Quieter, obviously, but not in the peaceful way I used to crave after work. It was the kind of silence that echoed, that pointed at every neglected corner of our life and said, "Look, really look." I walked through each room like a stranger. I noticed how many of her things were in boxes, like she had been halfway packed long before she told me she was unhappy, like she had been preparing for this departure silently for months, maybe longer. There were coffee mugs I didn't recognize, clothes I'd never seen her wear, books she'd underlined, written in books about identity, marriage, loneliness. Her world had been expanding, evolving, and I hadn't kept up. I hadn't even noticed. That first night alone, I didn't turn on the TV. I sat at the dining table, the one she once called the loneliest place in the house, and I reread every single letter she ever wrote me. Birthday cards, anniversary notes, little post-its she used to leave in my lunch when we were dating. There was a shift. Around year 3. Before that, her words were full of hope, passion, excitement about our life, about me. After that, they got shorter, politer, a bit more generic each year. I hadn't noticed. I thought it was just part of being married. You get comfortable. You say less. But now I saw it clearly. She was saying less because I had stopped listening. 2 days later, I got a message. From the Facebook group, not a comment. A private message. It was from one of the moderators, a woman named Julia. Her profile was anonymous, but her tone was sharp. "We know you are infiltrating the group. Your account has been removed. You violated our trust, our space. Whatever pain you're in, it's real, but you don't get to process it here. Not after what you did." I stared at the screen. I wanted to reply, to explain, to say I wasn't there to spy, not at first, that I had fallen into it and didn't know how to crawl out, but I didn't. They were right. I didn't belong there. That space wasn't mine to occupy, especially not in disguise, so I closed the tab, deleted the account, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened a blank document, and I started writing, not to them, not to the group, to her. Every day while she was gone, I wrote a letter, long, unfiltered, honest, not to win her back, not to prove anything, just to say the things I hadn't said when it mattered. I told her about the moments I remembered from our early days, how she used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how I used to love watching her read, the way her eyes moved faster when the story got good. I told her how ashamed I was of becoming the kind of man who thinks he's good, but doesn't make anyone feel loved. And then I told her the hardest thing, that I wasn't just scared of losing her. I was scared of facing the version of me that only existed in her absence. When I reached the 6th letter, I heard the key in the door, and everything in me froze. The sound of the key in the door hit me like a siren, not loud, but unmistakable. I was at the kitchen table, still in the same clothes from yesterday, my 6th letter halfway finished. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every second stretched like it was holding its breath. Then the door opened. She stepped inside quietly. No dramatic entrance. No suitcase this time. Just her purse, her coat, her presence. She looked around like she wasn't sure she belonged anymore. Or maybe she was checking if I'd changed anything, if the house still felt like hers. I stood slowly, not rushing. Not desperate. "Hi," I said. "Hi," she replied. Her voice was tired, but not cold. She didn't hug me, didn't smile, but she didn't leave either. That felt like something. "I didn't think you'd come back this soon," I said. "I wasn't planning to," she admitted, putting her bag down. "But I kept thinking about the letter, the one I left." She nodded. "And about what you wrote in that group," she added, her voice firmer now. "The anonymous post." I froze. "You knew it was me?" "Not at first," she said, "but after I read your letter, I went back and read that post again. It was your voice. The part where you said you kept loving the version of me you married. That's something you once said. In a card." She remembered that? I couldn't breathe. She sat down across from me. "I hated you for being in that group," she said. "Hated that you saw all those pieces of me I never meant you to see. But also..." She paused. "But also, you finally saw me." Those 4 words landed harder than anything she'd ever said to me. I didn't say anything. Just let her keep going. I don't know if I want to stay, she continued. I'm not saying this is some magical fix. I still feel lost. Still feel distant. But for the first time, I feel like you're actually in the room with me. She looked at the stack of handwritten letters on the table. Are those all for me? Yes, I said. One for each day you were gone. She reached for the first one, held it for a moment, then set it down without opening it. I'm not ready to read them yet, she said gently, but I will. Silence fell between us again, but this time, it didn't feel heavy, just cautious. Like something fragile was trying to form between us. Then she asked something unexpected. Do you want to try therapy? I blinked. Couples therapy? No, she said. I mean, yes, maybe eventually, but first, individual therapy, for both of us, separately. I hadn't expected that, but the moment she said it, I knew she was right. I do, I said. Yeah, I really do. She stood. I'm going to take a shower, she said. I don't know if I'm staying the night. I just needed to see if this house, if you felt different, and then she walked down the hallway. I sat back down, my hands shaking slightly. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first real conversation we'd had in years, and somehow, that was enough for now. She stayed the night. But not in our bed. She took the guest room, the one we always said we'd turn into an office, but never did. I offered her the bedroom, but she declined. Said she didn't want to sleep in a space that still felt like a lie. I understood. We didn't talk much that evening, just moved quietly around each other, like two people recovering from an earthquake, both still waiting to see if the aftershocks would hit. I made tea. She accepted. We sat at opposite ends of the sofa, sipping in silence. That silence, though, it wasn't hostile anymore. It was honest. The next morning, she left early without saying much. Just a short, "See you later," before closing the door, but she took the first 2 letters with her. It was a start. That day, I made an appointment with a therapist. I didn't wait for her to ask again. I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it because, for the first time, I saw the version of myself she had been writing about, and I hated him. Not because he was a villain, but because he was invisible, absent in plain sight. The therapist asked me a simple question during our first session. When did you stop being curious about your wife? I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was after our 3rd anniversary. Maybe after we moved to a quieter street. Or maybe after I started assuming she'd always be there, simply because she always had been. That terrified me. When she returned that night, she looked softer. Tired, still, but less guarded. I read the first letter, she said. I waited. It hurt, she admitted. But it felt real, and I needed that. She didn't hug me, didn't smile, but she sat beside me. Closer this time. We watched a film we used to love. Or tried to. She fell asleep halfway through, her head tilted slightly toward me but not resting on my shoulder, and I didn't move. I just stayed there, still, afraid that even a breath too loud might break the moment. Later that week, she began writing letters too. She didn't give them to me. I just saw her notebook open on the table sometimes, always closed when I walked in. I didn't ask. She wasn't ready to share, and that was okay. Healing isn't always about talking. Sometimes it's about holding space, about not rushing the silence. That weekend, she asked if I wanted to join her for a walk. No phones, no distractions. We walked 3 blocks without speaking. Then, suddenly, she said, "Do you remember our trip to Florence?" I nodded. Of course. You were so alive back then. So present. You touched my back when we crossed streets. You watched me when I talked like I was the only thing in the room. She looked straight ahead. I want to know if that version of you still exists. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth is, I wasn't sure either. But I was willing to find him again, not just for her. For me. I started waking up earlier. Not to impress her. I had learned my lesson about performative gestures, but because I couldn't sleep like I used to. My mind wouldn't let me. There was too much to process, too much to unlearn. Every morning before work, I wrote. Not letters this time. Just thoughts. Memories, regrets. I forced myself to revisit all the little moments I had dismissed as normal, but which, in hindsight, were signs. Like the time she asked if we could have a no-screens dinner once a week, and I laughed and said, "Sure, if you want to pretend we're in the 1800s. She didn't bring it up again. Or when she tried to explain why she hated the phrase, "I'm just tired," how it was never about physical exhaustion but emotional depletion, and I told her she was overthinking it. Now I realized she wasn't tired of the world, she was tired of me. When she got home that Thursday, she didn't go straight to her room. She found me at the table, quietly typing, and asked what I was writing. I paused. Just untangling things. She nodded, then walked past me, but stopped and placed a folded piece of paper next to my laptop. I wrote back, she said simply. She left the room without looking back. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Her letter was only half a page long. I don't know what I want yet. I'm scared that if I try to stay, I'll just fall back into the version of me that tolerated being unseen. But I also see you now. Not the man I used to beg for crumbs of attention, but someone sitting in his own discomfort and choosing not to run from it. That matters. It's not everything, but it matters. I reread it 3 times. Then I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way people do when they realize they've been forgiven a little more than they deserve. That night, she didn't go to the guest room. She walked into our bedroom slowly, stood at the door and said, "I'm not here to fix anything tonight. I just don't want to sleep alone." I nodded, "Okay." We lay side by side, not touching, not talking, but breathing the same rhythm. It wasn't romance. It wasn't reconciliation. It was recognition. That we were 2 fractured people trying to understand how the cracks formed and whether they could hold the weight of something new. That weekend, she suggested a rule. 1 hour every Sunday where we just talk. No phones, no distractions, no defensiveness. We called it the hour. The first one was messy. I over-explained. She shut down. We ended it early. The second was better. By the third, we were talking like 2 people meeting for the first time, not out of amnesia, but out of intention. And I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wanted to be interesting to her again, not because I was scared of losing her, but because I was finally starting to understand who she was becoming. By the time we reached our 4th hour, something shifted. We weren't just talking about the past anymore. We started asking each other real questions, hard ones, not to blame, but to understand. She asked me, "When did you stop being curious about me?" And I asked her, "When did you start thinking I couldn't handle your truth?" Both questions lingered between us like smoke, visible, inescapable. She answered first. "I think it was after I told you I hated my job," she said. "I remember I came home, completely drained, and told you I was thinking about quitting. And you said, 'Maybe you just need a vacation.'" She paused. That was the moment. Not because it was a bad answer, but because it was the safe answer. You didn't ask why I hated it. You didn't even look up from your laptop. I realized then, you didn't want to deal with the messy version of me. My throat tightened. "I was scared," I admitted. "Scared that if you started unraveling, I wouldn't know how to hold you together. So I gave you neat solutions instead of attention." She nodded slowly. "I didn't need fixing. I needed a witness." That hit me like a brick. We sat in silence after that. But it wasn't empty. It was full of the weight of years unsaid. Later that night, she brought up something I never thought she'd mention. "The group," she said. I looked at her carefully. "I'm not angry about it anymore," she continued. "I mean, I was, furious, violated. But now, I think it was the only way this ever would have happened." "You mean me waking up?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, us waking up." That surprised me. I had been performing too, she confessed, pretending to be fine, pretending to believe your compliments, pretending that our routines were enough. And deep down, I think I wanted to be caught. That made my stomach twist. "You wanted me to read those things?" "No," she said, "but I wanted someone to know how lonely I was. I just didn't think that someone would be you." We both laughed, a bitter kind of laugh, not cruel, just painfully self-aware. Then she said something I hadn't dared hope to hear. "I'm not ready to say we're okay, but I'm starting to believe we might not be doomed. That may sound small to someone else, but to me, it felt monumental, because for the first time, she wasn't just tolerating me, she was letting me in. And not into the curated version of her I had loved for years, but into the angry, bruised, complex version who had learned to protect herself. I had a long way to go. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to get back to how things used to be. I was learning to love her as she is now. And in doing that, maybe I could finally meet myself again too. A few weeks later, something happened that would have gone unnoticed before. She laughed. Not politely, not out of habit, not as a social reflex. A real laugh. Unfiltered, spontaneous, the kind that escaped before she could hide it. We were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. I had dropped a plate, not in a dramatic, clumsy way, just enough to make a sharp sound and watch it spin awkwardly across the counter like a hockey puck. She laughed. I froze, not because of the plate, but because it had been months since I'd heard that version of her voice. She must have noticed my expression, because she softened, wiped her hands on a towel and said, "I used to laugh all the time, didn't I?" "You did," I said. She tilted her head. "Do you think I stopped because of you?" I didn't answer right away. "I think," I said carefully, "you stopped because you didn't feel safe to be light anymore, and I wasn't the kind of man who noticed soon enough to ask why." She didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. That was enough for now. Later that night, she joined me on the couch again. No big declarations, no physical closeness, just shared space, no tension. We watched a documentary about a couple restoring an old, crumbling estate in southern France. I don't even remember most of the film, but I remember one line the woman said as she pointed to a cracked wall. "Some structures aren't ruined. They're just waiting to be understood differently." It stayed with me. Because that was us. We weren't trying to rebuild what we had. We were uncovering something entirely new beneath the wreckage. In therapy, I told my counselor that I was afraid of becoming that man again, the one who thought he was kind simply because he wasn't cruel, the man who confused being present with being attentive. He said something I didn't expect. Shame can't be the foundation of change. If you build on shame, you'll always be scared of slipping. That hit hard, because I'd been doing everything from a place of guilt, and while guilt had opened my eyes, it couldn't keep me awake forever. I needed a new reason. So I started focusing less on being better and more on being honest, with her, with myself. I told her when I felt like I was overcorrecting, when I was scared she'd never fully trust me again, when I still caught myself wanting praise just for showing up, and she listened. Sometimes with her arms crossed, sometimes with tears, but she listened. One night, she handed me a letter of her own. Not a reply to anything I'd written, just something she'd felt ready to say. "I don't miss who you were, but I'm starting to like who you're becoming. And I think I might even like who I'm becoming too." I read it 3 times. It didn't promise anything, didn't wrap up our story in a neat bow, but it was the first time in a long time that I saw hope, not as a fantasy, but as a choice we were both still making, not because we had to, but because somehow, in all the mess, we still wanted to. I used to think trust was like a light switch, either on or off, but now I see it more like a sunrise. It comes back in slow, cautious layers, almost imperceptible at first. Then suddenly, you realize the room isn't dark anymore. That's how it felt with us. Little things changed. She started leaving her notebook open sometimes. I never read it, never even peeked. But the fact that it was left there, unguarded, meant more to me than any conversation could. I stopped asking her if we were okay. I stopped looking for signs of forgiveness in her expressions. Instead, I just stayed present, not performatively, just consistently, quietly. We still had setbacks. One night, during the hour, I interrupted her. Not rudely, just instinctively. I was trying to explain my side of a memory she brought up. She went silent. Shut down completely. I apologized, but it was too late. The wall came up. She left the room. I sat there alone, furious with myself. Old me would have followed her, defended myself, tried to fix it in the moment. But this time, I waited. The next morning, I slid a note under her door. "I'm still learning." I know that's not an excuse, but it is the truth. When you're ready to tell me how I made you feel, I'll be ready to hear it, without defending, without interrupting, without needing to be right. She didn't reply with words. But that night, she sat next to me again, and her shoulder brushed mine. She stayed close the whole episode we watched, and I knew we were still in it, still choosing. The biggest change came unexpectedly. We were in the supermarket grabbing groceries. She reached for a jar of something I never remembered her liking. I said without thinking, "Since when do you like artichoke hearts?" She looked at me, surprised. "Always have." I blinked. "I don't remember that." Her reply was quiet, but it pierced. "You never asked." There it was again, the reminder of all the years I lived next to her without really knowing her. I nodded. "Then tell me now." Tell me why you like them, she smiled faintly. Because they're complicated. You have to peel away so much to get to the good part. I laughed, but it wasn't really about the artichokes. She was talking about herself, about us. Back at home, while putting away the groceries, she stopped suddenly and said, I didn't think you'd make it this far. I looked at her. What changed? You stopped asking for my reassurance, she said. You started showing up without needing a prize for it. That hit me harder than I expected, because it meant she'd noticed. All of it, and she still hadn't left. That night, as we got ready for bed, I asked, Do you still think I'm mediocre? She turned toward me, eyebrow raised, amused. Honestly? She said. I braced myself. I think you were, she admitted. But now, I don't know what you are yet, and strangely, that's the first time you've actually intrigued me in years. She turned off the light and got into bed, and I lay there, staring into the dark, thinking, maybe curiosity is how love begins again. It had been nearly 2 months since I found the group, 2 months of walking the tightrope between redemption and rejection, 2 months of seeing her not as my wife, but as a person I was meeting again. Slowly, deliberately, without shortcuts. One evening during our hour, she asked me a question I wasn't prepared for. What did you think I was going to do after you found the posts? I hesitated. At first, I thought you'd deny it, or cry, or maybe leave. And when I didn't, she asked. I didn't know what to do with that, I admitted. You didn't react the way I expected. You just stayed calm, cold, like you'd already made peace with losing me. She nodded. I had, a long time ago. The honesty of that hit harder than any insult. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just telling the truth. I looked at her, not searching for pity, not for reassurance, just seeing her, fully, with all the sharp edges I had ignored for years. She continued. The worst part wasn't that you read it. It was realizing how long I had been screaming into a void, and that you were the void. I swallowed hard. And now? Now, she said carefully. I'm watching to see if you become something other than that emptiness. That night I didn't sleep well. Not because I was anxious, but because I couldn't stop thinking about what it meant to be seen again, and how fragile that privilege is. The next morning I made her coffee. Nothing dramatic. No extra flourishes, just the way she liked it. Finally, exactly the way she liked it. She didn't say thank you, but she drank the whole thing. Later that week, something else changed. She invited me to her therapy session, not as a gesture of closeness, but as a witness. I want you to hear what I've been saying about you, she said, not so you can defend yourself, just so you know. It terrified me, but I said yes. Sitting in that room, hearing her speak openly, not with cruelty but clarity, was like watching my own eulogy. I used to feel like a mirror he only looked into when he needed to feel good about himself, she told the therapist. He wasn't violent, he wasn't cruel, but he was absent. And there's a special kind of loneliness in being next to someone who believes they're doing enough simply because they aren't hurting you. I didn't say a word. I just listened, because that's what she needed. Afterward, we walked to the car in silence. Then, without warning, she said, You were brave in there. Not brave, I said. Just overdue. She looked at me, really looked. Still. You could have chosen not to come. I've done enough choosing not to, I said. She smiled, just barely. And then, for the first time since this began, she reached out and touched my hand. It was small, tentative, but it was real, and in that moment, I realized love doesn't always come back as fireworks. Sometimes, it returns as fingertips. After that session, things didn't magically fall into place. There were no sudden declarations of love, no dramatic reunions in the rain. Life just continued, but with a different rhythm, a slower one, a more honest one. We didn't pretend anymore, not when something felt off, not when we needed space, not when one of us messed up, and we did mess up. I still caught myself slipping into old habits, trying to fix things too quickly, trying to fill silence with solutions instead of presence. She still pulled away sometimes, testing the air between us, making sure it was safe, but something was different now. We noticed. We named it. We didn't let small wounds fester into quiet resentments. One night, she sat across from me at dinner, stared at her plate for a long time, then said, You know what scares me the most? I set down my fork. What? That I might fall back into the version of me that tolerated all of this, she said, that I'll stop noticing again. It broke my heart, but I understood. I don't want you to tolerate me, I said. I want you to challenge me. Even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. She looked up. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, I replied, and the next day. Because that's what love was becoming for me. Not a feeling, but a practice, a discipline, a choice I had to make every single day, even when it was uncomfortable, especially then. One Saturday morning, I found her standing in the hallway, staring at an old wedding photo on the wall, the one where we were laughing, soaked in champagne and sunlight. Do you miss them? She asked. I didn't have to ask who she meant. I miss what they thought they had, I said, but I don't want to go back to being him. She looked at me and for a long time said nothing. Then finally, good, because I don't want to go back to being her either. We stood there, side by side, not touching, but connected in a way that felt more intimate than anything we'd had in years. Later that night, she gave me something I hadn't dared ask for. She handed me her notebook. All of it? I asked, surprised. She nodded. Start at the beginning. I stayed up until 3 a.m. reading her entries. They were brutal. Some pages were venomous, some heartbreaking, some filled with hope she didn't even realize she still had, but they were all real. And they gave me a map, not back to her, but into her. The next morning, I told her I wasn't afraid of her anger anymore. I think your rage saved us, I said, because it was still energy, still passion. It meant you hadn't fully left. She didn't say anything. But her hand found mine again, fingertips again. A little firmer this time, and I knew, without needing words, that we were finally stepping out of survival mode, one fragile step at a time. It took us nearly 5 months to stop measuring our progress in apologies. At some point, I couldn't say exactly when, we stopped counting the things we'd survived and started building something that had never existed between us before. Not a return. A beginning. The Facebook group was long behind us now. She had left it on her own terms. No dramatic exit, no grand announcement, just a quiet departure, like someone stepping out of a room that no longer needed them. I needed that group when I felt voiceless, she said once, but now I want to say things where they matter, and she did. She started talking to me again, not just updates and logistics, thoughts, fears, dreams. We took long walks, sometimes in silence, sometimes deep in conversation. I learned more about her in those months than I had in our first 5 years of marriage. She wasn't the same woman I married. And thank God, because I wasn't the same man either. I stopped trying to be the good husband, the checklist version of a man who does all the right things. I stopped chasing her approval like it was a prize to earn. Instead, I practiced presence. I learned to hold her words without trying to fix them, to admit when I didn't understand instead of pretending I did, to apologize without needing forgiveness handed back like a receipt. We still had arguments, still got tired, still had moments when our old selves tried to sneak back in through the cracks, but the difference now, we didn't let the cracks grow, we caught them, together. One night, lying in bed, not touching, just facing each other, she said something that stayed with me. You're not the main character anymore. I froze for a second, unsure how to take that, but then she smiled. Really smiled, and neither am I. I understood. For so long, we'd both been living in stories where the other person was either the villain or the background. Now, finally, we were co-authors. And the story wasn't about who was right, or who gave more, or who hurt first. It was about who chose to stay, and who chose to change. We didn't celebrate a specific moment as a turning point. There wasn't one. Just quiet mornings, shared jokes, open notebooks, and love. Not loud, not constant, but steady. So when people ask me if I ever confronted her about what she wrote, if I ever made her feel the weight of her words in that group, I say no. Because she already carried it, and the real question isn't why she wrote it. The real question is, why did I let her get to that point without noticing? Now I notice. Now I see. Now I stay.